My name is Claire Mercer. And at 25, the glare of the stage lights felt almost blinding as they spilled across my skin. The polished podium shimmered beneath the heat, and my name, Claire Mercer, echoed through the grand hall with ceremonial precision. Applause followed, polite but distant, the kind that belonged more to the occasion than to me. I walked forward, steadying my breath as the dean extended a hand and the photographer instructed, "Smile this way." I obeyed, smiling on cue, holding the diploma folder at the exact angle they wanted. But my eyes betrayed me. They drifted toward the far right section of the auditorium, the seats reserved for family. Row D, Section 3. Empty. All of them. It shouldn't have hurt the way it did. I should have known better by now. Yet, the sight of those unclaimed chairs sent a hollow ache through my chest, deep and familiar. I had clung to a faint, foolish hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this day might be different. That they'd show up, clap proudly, wave when I walked across that stage. That someone, anyone, would be there just for me. But the silence from that row was its own cruel answer. If you've ever stood in a crowd and still felt utterly alone, if you've ever been let down by the very people who were supposed to cheer the loudest, then you know that ache I felt that day. The memories pressed in fast, uninvited. My 16th birthday. Belle, my younger sister by 3 years, had been whisked away for a weekend in New York to attend a prestigious dance workshop. Her big break. My gift? A store-bought cake left on the kitchen counter, the frosting already sweating in the summer heat. My high school graduation. They arrived just as my class was being dismissed, claiming traffic delays, though I knew they'd been busy driving Belle to a photo shoot. The scholarship dinner I'd attended alone because my parents said it was just a formality and not worth rearranging their evening for Belle, the golden one. The family's living trophy. Every dream of hers was treated like divine prophecy. Mine, however, were footnotes in conversations about practicality. Be independent, my mother would say. Don't expect handouts, my father would add. And his favorite, toughen up, Claire. As if resilience were something you could wrap around yourself like a jacket and be done with it. The dean's handshake lingered long enough to snap me back to the moment. I returned to my seat, the diploma heavy in my lap, its weight a mix of pride and quiet sorrow. Around me, graduates leaned into their families, laughter and cameras flashing like a storm of light. Bouquets exchanged, tears shed, hugs shared. I sat still, hands folded neatly, rehearsing the polite lie I'd offer later. Oh, they couldn't make it. Busy with work. When the ceremony ended, I stepped outside into the crisp spring air. The campus was alive with celebration, students tossing caps, parents calling names, but all I could hear was the hum of my phone buzzing in my purse. Once, then again, I pulled it out, frowning at the unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. Main area code. For a heartbeat, I considered letting it ring out, but something in me hesitated. I answered, "Ms. Mercer?" The voice was low, professional. "This is Elliot Brandt, attorney for the Lewis estate in Harbor Bay. I'm calling regarding your grandparents' affairs." I stopped mid-step, the crowd around me a blur. My grandparents, Thomas and Evelyn Lewis. It had been months since I'd heard anyone speak their names. I'd been the one who handled their memorial. Sent out the notices, arranged the flowers, and stood mostly alone by their graves, Elliot continued. As their sole heir, you've inherited their property and investments. We'll need to meet soon to finalize the transfer, but I can confirm the estate's current value is approximately $2 million, I froze. The words seemed unreal, their sound almost swallowed by the spring breeze. Around me, laughter and music echoed from other graduates, but I was caught in a bubble of stillness. $2 million. It wasn't the number that stunned me. It was what it meant. They had chosen me. Deliberately. Unequivocally. Images flickered through my mind like an old reel. My grandfather teaching me how to straighten a leaning fence post. His hands calloused and sure. My grandmother dusting flour off her palms as we rolled pie crust together on the kitchen counter. the two of them sitting quietly on the porch, books in their laps, the sea whispering beyond the rose garden. Through high school, through college, I had been the one who drove to Harbor Bay every weekend. I fixed leaky faucets, trimmed hedges, picked up prescriptions. They never asked much, just company, maybe a shared meal. My parents and Belle only appeared for photos, or when there was a holiday meal worth documenting. Ms. Mercer? Elliot's voice broke my reverie. Yes, I said softly. If you can be in Harbor Bay this week, we'll begin the transition process. I'll be there, I replied, my tone firm. We exchanged details, and when I hung up, I stood there for a long moment beneath the bright, relentless sky. A gust of wind lifted my hair, cool and sharp. I looked down at the diploma still clutched in my hand and realized this inheritance wasn't just a gift. It was a warning, because once my family found out, they would come, and I needed to be ready. 2 days later, I was seated across from Padal Damon Clay, a trust attorney in downtown Portland. He was in his 40s, composed, the kind of man who measured every word. I told him everything, how my parents twisted generosity into leverage, how helping manage always meant taking control. When I finished, he nodded. If you want absolute protection, an irrevocable trust is your best option, he said. Once established, no one, not even you, can reclaim the assets under your name. It will all be held securely beyond anyone's reach. You'll be the sole trustee, but legally, it's separate from you. The word irrevocable struck me like a seal. It sounded merciless, but I'd lived too long under the illusion of mercy. For the next 3 weeks, I buried myself in paperwork and signatures. Damon set up an LLC under the trust's name. Every bill, tax record, insurance policy, transferred. The Harbor Bay property now belonged to that entity, and not a single record tied back to me directly. The investment accounts were closed. Their funds shifted into trust-managed portfolios requiring dual authentication. Only Damon and I held access. I stored one copy of the documents in his office safe and another in a deposit box in Boston, far from Maine, far from them. I didn't tell a soul. Not even my closest friends. The fewer who knew, the safer it was. I understood my family too well. They were masters of charming information out of people. Still, on quiet nights, I wondered if what I'd done made me cruel. To cut them out preemptively, completely, without confrontation. But then I'd remember the look on my father's face when I'd begged for help paying tuition, or the tone of my mother's voice dismissing my every accomplishment as luck. Coldness wasn't cruelty, it was survival. When Elliot called to confirm that the estate transfer was finalized, I felt a strange calm. Everything was sealed, locked, hidden. Now, all that remained was to wait, and the waiting didn't last long. It started subtly. A text from Belle. Saw you were in Harbor Bay last weekend. Thought I might stop by sometime. We should catch up. Then a call from my mother, her voice sugary, asking about my job, my plans for the house. My father appeared a week later, toolbox in hand, saying he'd noticed the porch railing looked loose and could fix it, no charge. Belle began showing up with small gifts, cookies, flowers, always smiling, always curious. Hey, do you still keep the deed in the house? She'd ask casually. Just curious. I've never seen it. I'd smile right back, change the subject. At dinner one Sunday, my mother launched into a monologue about keeping family property in the family. Belle chimed in, how much she adored the place, how she could see herself living there, maybe even renovating it. I listened, nodded, said nothing. Each interaction felt like pressure building against a locked door. They were testing my defenses, probing for weakness. They thought I was still the old Claire, the one who'd bend to keep the peace. But not anymore. The morning it finally broke, the ocean air was sharp enough to sting. I was sweeping leaves off the porch when I heard tires crunching on gravel. A sleek black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Belle, flawless as ever, confidence radiating off her like perfume. My parents followed, my mother clutching a slim folder, my father walking with that deliberate, self-important stride that always announced authority. Morning. Row! Belle called breezily, striding toward me. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I just wanted to let you know, she began, pausing dramatically. This house is in my name now." She said it like a prize winner accepting applause. "Mom and Dad think it's best if you move out this week," she added. "I already have a potential buyer." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. "Really?" I asked. My father stepped forward, pulling a sheaf of papers from the folder. "Your grandparents' will," he said evenly, "had an error. Technically, the property should have been left to both you and your sister. We've worked with a lawyer to correct it, and we've transferred title to Belle so it's easier to manage." He held the papers out to me, as if expecting I'd take them with gratitude. I glanced down. At first glance, they could have fooled someone who didn't know what to look for. A blue ink seal in the corner, signatures and looping script. But the seal design was wrong. The notary stamp number incomplete, and the signatures shaky, inconsistent. Belle smiled like a realtor about to close a deal. "Don't worry, I'll handle everything. We can get movers here in a week." I let the moment stretch, watching the certainty in their eyes, storing every detail. The date printed at the top, the name of the so-called notary, even the faint watermark that didn't match county records. "I've heard you," I said finally, my voice even. Then I stepped back, letting them think they'd planted their flag. They left looking satisfied. I stayed on the porch until the SUV disappeared, already knowing I wouldn't have to wait long for their next move. 2 days later, the crunch of tires on gravel came earlier than I expected. A white moving truck rolled up first, the black SUV trailing close behind. From the passenger seat, Belle hopped out in a fitted tracksuit, phone in hand, eyes alike with anticipation. My parents followed, my father with a fixed smile, my mother already gesturing toward the porch as if directing a stage play. Behind me, Mark Ellery, the county property official, stood in a neatly pressed navy suit, a leather folder tucked under one arm. We'd spoken the night before. He'd reviewed every document in the trust and agreed to meet her in person. Now he waited, silent and steady, while I folded my arms across my chest. The movers had barely made it to the walkway when they slowed, taking in the scene. My father tried to keep moving forward, papers in hand, but Mark stepped into view, opening his folder and withdrawing a document stamped with the county seal. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer. Ms. Belle Mercer," he said, voice clear enough to carry to the truck. "I'm here on behalf of the County Property Records Office. As of last April, this property was transferred into an irrevocable trust under the sole trusteeship of Miss Claire Mercer. Any transfer of ownership attempted after that date is legally void and may constitute fraud." Belle blinked rapidly. "Fraud? We corrected a mistake in the will." Mark didn't even glance at her. "Our records show the paperwork you file-duced an unlicensed notary and was processed through an out-of-state service flagged for fraudulent filings. This is your official warning. Any further attempt to claim this property without authorization will be referred for criminal investigation." The movers exchanged looks, then began backing toward their truck. My mother's lips pressed into a tight line. My father folded the papers slowly, as if buying time before turning sharply toward the SUV. Belle lingered a moment longer, her expression hardening. "You'll regret this," she said under her breath. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. When their engines faded down the road, Mark handed me my copy of the notice, his eyes steady. "They won't forget this. Neither would I, and I knew the quiet that followed wouldn't last. 3 mornings after the porch confrontation, I found a thick envelope wedged in my apartment mailbox. The return address belonged to a law firm in Portland I'd never heard of, but the name on the line beneath was instantly familiar. Sylvia Mercer. Inside was a 4-page letter printed on heavy cream paper. The language was polished, but the demands were anything but subtle. $150,000 in cash as emotional compensation, joint ownership of the Harbor Bay property with Belle, and a monthly stipend until further notice to ensure the family's long-term well-being. The letter accused me of causing irreparable harm to maternal and sibling bonds by keeping the estate entirely in my name. I read it twice, then set it aside and reached for my phone. If they wanted to take this into the legal arena, I'd meet them there. Selena Voss agreed to see me that afternoon. Her office was on the 15th floor of a downtown building, the walls lined with framed trust and estate case victories. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the letter, the forged documents, and the attempted takeover at the house. Her response was immediate. "We send a cease and desist, direct, documented, and final. They have no claim, not with that trust in place, and we find proof of who filed those forged papers." Within 48 hours, the letter was on its way to my mother's attorney and her home address. It cited the trust's legal protections, warned against further harassment, and made it clear that any future attempts would trigger civil and potentially criminal action. Selena's investigator didn't take long to find the trail. The Forga transfer had been submitted through a property filing service, flagged in multiple states for fraudulent activity. The name attached to the submission, Belle Merkles. The notary seal number didn't exist in the state registry. Seeing it in black and white left me with a cold, steady anger. The county officials' warning on the porch had been generous. They could have walked away. Instead, they doubled down. I left Selena's office with the report tucked in my bag, wondering if maybe this would be enough to stop them. But deep down, I knew my family too well to believe it was over. The first sign came from an unexpected place. A text from my cousin Maurice. "You need to hear this." She sent over an audio file, and my mother's voice filled my kitchen. Low and deliberate. "I don't want to speak badly about her," Sylvia said. "But Claire took advantage of Dad when he was weak. Everyone knows he wasn't thinking clearly when he signed those papers." Maris didn't stop there. Screenshots from a group chat followed. My mother spinning the same story to a circle of relatives with Belle chiming in about family fairness and hidden motives. A few cousins even piled on, speculating about me, forging signatures, twisting the truth into something unrecognizable. I sent it all to Selena. She didn't hesitate. "They're trying to turn this into a reputational war. If you let this stick, every move you make will be seen through that lens. We fight back with facts publicly." For 2 days, we built a 12-page statement all facts. Every date and document lined up. The trust's creation, the property transfer, the fraudulent filing trail with Belle's name on it, and the county's records disproving every accusation. I sent it to every relative in that group chat and to anyone my mother had tried to sway. The subject line was simple: the full truth. Apologies began trickling in within hours. Some were brief, just a few words acknowledging they'd been wrong. Others came with long explanations about how convincing my mother had sounded. Not everyone changed their mind. A handful doubled down, accusing me of airing family business, but the momentum had shifted. The lies no longer stood unchallenged. By the end of the week, the silence from my mother's camp felt heavier than any reply. I knew they were regrouping. News of Belle's new job came from a mutual acquaintance who thought it was great we were both doing well. A quick search confirmed it. She'd joined a luxury real estate firm known for touting ethics and client trust. I didn't waste time. Selena and I compiled the forged transfer documents, the invalid notary seal verification, and the county's fraud warning into a single indexed file. I sent it to the firm's ethics department with a short note. "This concerns your employee, Belle Mercer, and her involvement in attempted property fraud." 3 days later, the firm terminated her. The case was forwarded to the state licensing board, which opened a formal review. That's when the counterattack came. Belle hired a lawyer with a reputation for aggressive PR spin. He framed my actions as malicious interference in a young professional's career, feeding sympathetic quotes to a local business blog. Selena was ready. We sent the licensing board certified copies of every court-stamped document, including the cease and desist letter, the investigative report tying the fraudulent filing to Belle, and the county's statement from the Porch confrontation. The board acknowledged receipt, confirming the evidence would remain in the case record. The PR noise fizzled once the facts were unthettable. I could almost hear the silence from their side, tight, calculated, waiting for the next angle. I knew it would come, and I knew I couldn't afford to look away when it did. 2 months later, a plain white envelope arrived, the return address from a Salem law firm. Inside, the letter was brief. All claims against me withdrawn. No further contact to be made except where legally necessary. I read it once, then folded it neatly and placed it in my file. No triumph, no gloating, just the quiet certainty that a chapter had closed. That weekend I drove to Harbor Bay. The gravel road curved toward the house, maple leaves blazing in autumn colors, the sea stretching silver beyond. Inside, the air held the faint scent of aged wood and the lavender diffuser I'd left months ago. I walked through each room slowly, my hand brushing the red brick walls, the photographs, the worn armchair by the window. In the stillness, my grandfather's voice seemed to echo, "Protect what's worth keeping." I understood now he'd meant more than the property. It was my right to choose who could reach me, my ability to keep my dignity intact, my peace unbroken. On the porch, I looked out at the horizon until the light began to fade, knowing I would decide which doors stayed closed from here